Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
At the second stop on my tour tonight, I looked down and realized right at my feet was a piece of bubble gum that was, I'm assuming, pretty fresh, stuck to the sidewalk. And sticking out of it was a not entirely dead cockroach. Like, it had clearly been smashed, and smashed into the gum specifically, but its legs were still flailing about wildly. And there was part of me going, put it out of its misery. And another part of me going, no, I don't want to get that cockroach stuck to my shoe with that bubble gum. So I just walked on. I feel bad about it, but I walked on. The good news is I'm pretty sure one of my guests stepped on it. But that was just sort of, I don't know, I feel like it's somehow metaphorically resonant to life in the French Quarter in the heat of early September. Because, of course, yeah, August is over. That doesn't mean the heat went away. And tonight my tour was pretty good. It was fine. I did have one bachelorette party who were a little bit too drunk. Like, most of them were perfectly fine. There were a couple of girls who had clearly had, like, one too many. They seemed very sweet, though. And also, their theme for the night was Shrek costumes, but subtle Shrek costumes. So, like, the bride was wearing this lovely green dress that looked like a normal green dress, but she had little Shrek ears sticking out of her headband and stuff like that. But one of the girls just clearly had had a couple too many. Like, she seemed very nice, but no. And after we'd done a couple of stories, one of which involved sex work pretty heavily, I gave the warning that I always give that the next stop we're going to is a very heavy one. This is about enslavement. This is not a woohoo stop. And as I was like walking away, taking them to the next stop, she comes up to me and is like, yeah, but when are we gonna hear the naughty stories? And I'm like, well, we already have covered one of them and we will hear more. And she's like, no, I want to hear about like genitals out, and like I want to hear about a guy killed while his dick was in his hand, and I want to hear about vaginas. And I'm just sitting here like, oh my god, no. Now, the good news is I didn't have to deal with her long, because one of her friends saw or heard what she was saying and immediately came up and just literally pulled her to the back of the group. And I'm like, thank you. Because in case you're not aware of basic common decency, like, yeah, our stories do involve some discussion of sexuality. And yes, we are talking about sex work. And yes, I do drop cuss words sometimes on the tour. But at the same time, this is in public, on the side of the road, in an area that, families could be walking by at any given moment. And also, I don't know about y'all, but I don't really feel comfortable staring in the face of strangers less than a foot away while I talk about random stories about genitalia. And there's also the pure, simple fact of we're telling historical stories. And you know what there's not a lot of historical record of? Really explicitly sexual stories. So sorry, ma'am, I could not fulfill your wish for stories about explicit sex. But the last thing that happened on the tour tonight was less fun. We were at the last location, and the last location, if you get there at the right time, you can get a spot, but one of the houses happens to be set further back from the road than all the others by about like 3 or 4 feet. And that's perfect, because that means you can gather your group towards the front, and there is like a full 8 feet behind them for the other people to walk by. Now, annoyingly, because it's set back, a lot of people walking by, like walking down the sidewalk, just don't notice that there's room behind the guests. But tonight, it was really obvious because I didn't have that many guests. And I am telling my story and I hear screaming, and it does not sound like happy screaming. So I literally just go, okay, guys, pause. And I look over to see what's going on, and there's a guy walking down the street screaming at somebody who's riding his bike by in the street. And I sort of like, okay, we're just going to let this guy go by. And he gets to us, and instead of, taking one step to the right so he could go behind the guests, he literally charges straight into the circle saying, excuse me. And the weird thing is, he was super polite when he got to the group and was like, singing as he walked through, "Go into the chapel, I just need to get by," and stuff like that. And I'm like, "Okay, sir, there's room behind." And he's like, "No, you're blocking the sidewalk." I'm like, "There's literally a path behind the guests. There's a huge amount of room behind them." And that's when he switches, like, as if someone literally hit a switch. He went from being all friendly to screaming, "How dare you! Like, who do you think you are, you bitch?" And stuff like that. And I was just like, I shouldn't have said anything. But, he was literally touching my guests, which is never a good thing. The good news is he also never slowed down at all. So by the time he got sort of explicit, he was already pushing out the other side of the guests, and that just meant I got to watch him awkwardly and huddle my guest off to the side for maybe 2 seconds before he was at the corner and pausing to shout out one more obscene thing that I'm not even sure what he said because I wasn't listening. But the important thing is, yeah, it was a night.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.